Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video it is going to be another ranking. And I am going to be ranking all 5 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is one of my absolute favorite action-adventure fantasy summer blockbuster movie franchises. And yes, that is a very, very specific category. But since the summer blockbuster season is finally upon us, it felt right to cover these movies now. And before we get into my ranking, I just wanted to mention that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos. So be sure to check that out, and I'm sure you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 5. Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. This movie more so feels like a Jack Sparrow spin-off. But the thing is, I don't feel like Jack was ever really meant to be a solo leading character. He works best as a major supporting character that is sort of interwoven throughout everybody else's stories. Think about the first 3. We follow Jack, Elizabeth, Barbossa, Will, Davy Jones, and what's the one thing that connects all of these stories? Jack. And I feel like that's how this character works best. As for this movie, I think that Ian McShane as Blackbeard was a great casting, and he does an okay job. I really like Ian McShane in most things that he's in. And while he does a great job portraying this character, I just don't find the character to be all that interesting. And pretty much the same thing with Penelope Cruz. Again, I think she does fine in the role that she's in, but the character is just not all that interesting. She just sort of acts as a love interest for Jack, and another connection into his past. But I'm also left wondering, where were all of these people during the events of the last 3 movies? Why was the Fountain of Youth never once mentioned? It seems like a pretty big thing. Oh, and the whole subplot with the dude loving the mermaid is just completely useless. It's just a weak, uninteresting, unnecessary subplot. They just wanted another love story in there because Will and Elizabeth were gone. Even though that mermaid sequence itself is likely the best sequence in the whole movie. And look, don't get me wrong, this movie isn't awful, I've seen it plenty of times. There's still lots of the typical pirate fun you've come to know, expect, and love. But in the end, it primarily comes off as a hollow cash grab. And the absence of director Gore Verbinski and stars Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley is very noticeable. Number 4. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. I at least admire the fact that they tried to tie this one back into the first 3. Because for most people, these last 2 movies are completely interchangeable, in the sense that they really don't care for either one. I like that they have Will and Elizabeth's son as one of the main characters, and I think that Brenton Thwaites both looks and plays the part very well. Although I will never forgive them for catfishing us so hard with those trailers. Because Orlando Bloom being back as Will has what, like 2 or 3 minutes of screen time? And those 5 seconds that you see of Keira Knightley back as Elizabeth is the only 5 seconds that she's in the movie. I did, however, think that Javier Bardem played a great villain. I mean, he's certainly not the most well-written or interesting villain of all time, but it is very clear that Javier is just hamming it up and having an absolute blast in the role. And that's really just kind of what this movie is. A lot of fun if you're willing to let it be. It's much less dark than the first 3 and much more lighthearted and takes itself a lot less seriously than on Stranger Tides. And the whole splitting of the sea sequence is certainly an entertaining, eye-popping bit. Oh, and I also thought that Kaya Scodelario was great in her role as well. But this movie's whole final big reveal did fall flat. And again, why was something as big as this trident not mentioned in the first 3 movies if it has all this power and was this important? And I'm really not sure how to feel about that end credit sequence. I know at this point that they are likely to never follow up on it, but I'm very mixed on my reaction. Number 3, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. I love this movie in all honesty. I think it was a fantastic, natural progression for the franchise. It went bigger, bolder, and darker than the first. I mean, our introduction to Davy Jones is him slitting a bunch of dudes' throats. Yeah, it's pretty dark. And in all honesty, it paid off fairly well. Jam-packed with mesmerizing visuals, intense action sequences, and a memorable new foe in Davy Jones. Alongside his crew of ocean creature-laced cronies, and one giant pissed-off kraken that can take down any ship that doesn't contain main characters in a single strike. And going back to Davy Jones, I mean, just look at the guy. When I mean mesmerizing visuals, this dude looks lifelike. Easily one of the most well-recognized CGI characters of all time. The stakes are even higher, and we find all of our main characters embarking on their own individual journeys, with one thing that connects them all: the heart of Davy Jones. My only real gripes with this movie are that it can feel a bit dragged out at times. It very much so like a filler movie in the sense that it can at times feel like it's only really meant to lead into the third one. Number 2, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Look, I know that this movie gets a ton of flack for being far too bloated for its own good. And while that may be true for certain parts of it, I unapologetically love it. Despite its flaws, despite its overindulgence into its own absurdity, it's just so much fun. I can't help but have a big dumb grin on my face the entire time. It's goofy, it's over the top, it's often utterly ridiculous, but it also manages to feel like an epic grand finale. A satisfying culmination of everything in the franchise thus far. The action sequences are bigger and more thrilling than ever. Davy Jones again is an exceptional foe. The visuals are top notch. I mean, this movie is among the most expensive ever made. And whether you love it or hate it, it's undeniably an unforgettable finale. And I say finale because they should have stopped after 3. And number 1 has got to be Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. This first entry is a classic at this point. A movie based off of a not so popular Disney theme park attraction, directed by a then relatively unknown Gore Verbinski, and going all in with a massive budget and a lengthy runtime. This movie really did have every right to fail, but instead we ended up with one of the most iconic action, adventure, and fantasy movies of all time. With countless quotable moments, phenomenal storytelling and world building, exciting bombastic action, a memorable cast of characters, a brilliant score, magnificent set and costume design, and by far one of the most unique, one-of-a-kind tales. This truly is one of my favorite movies of all time. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. And feel free to let me know what ranking you'd like to see next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.